Do you ever feel like watercolor is fighting back? Cauliflowers, wild runs of color, mud, stiff strokes. Let's flip that. Loose watercolor isn't a skill, it's a mindset. And today I'll show you 3 tiny shifts that'll help you paint with ease and actually enjoy it. And if you want to feel this in your own 2 hands, I've also got a free 30-minute tree class that you can paint along with. Links are in the description. But first, let's talk about those 3 shifts. The first little shift in approach is to let go of this idea of trying to master control over your watercolor supplies. Instead, let them collaborate. They can do half the work. You can see in this little sunset painting I'm working on, I started with lots of water to give the watercolor paint a chance to do things that only watercolor paint can do. You know, one of the joys of watercolor are those wonderful effects that no other medium can create. The crazy things that some of those pigments do when they interact with the water, and the gorgeous texture of that paper, which I absolutely love. Why fight that? Let these magical things happen. For me, a big part of loose painting is letting go of needing the painting to turn out just like that reference photo. It's really just a starting point. Once you start putting in the washes of color in the painting that you're creating, it takes on a life of its own. It's so much fun to just play along with it, see what appears, and then figure out what you want to try next. It's much more satisfying to let that image evolve, and in my mind, much easier than trying to force it to look exactly like whatever preconceived idea we had when we started. But what happens if something much wilder than you anticipated happens? You know, the sort of thing we might want to call a mistake. The second shift in approach that I'd like to talk about is exactly that. If mistakes are something that are tripping you up, I've got more on that in these videos. But stick with me while I show you some of my mistakes, the ones I choose to keep in my paintings. In fact, if they don't happen on their own, I tend to put them in intentionally. I really do. In this little painting, I actually created a bit of a spill because I was really wishing that the poppy color had kind of spilt out into the background to give it some movement. One of the things I love about flowers is their rich abundance of color. To me, it seems so fitting that the color overflows, at least in some small part of the painting. These happy accidents are the bits that add energy and show the human hand and heart in the process. That's more and more meaningful to us in these interesting times of AI perfection. Let me show you a painting from my chickens course in the Happy Painters Hub. Color from the body of the bird spilled out into the wet area of the page. So building on our first idea shift, I take this to be a collaboration from the paint and water. And to me, it connects the chicken with the background, but it also conveys his lively, energetic character. Now, I probably could have blotted up the color spill, or indeed taken care not to paint too close to the damp part of the page. But I would never want to do that. It's a matter of personal preference, of course. But I rather think that once you try painting in this very liberating way, you never want to go back. Here's another example, again from the Happy Painters Hub. This time it was from the Autumn Paths series. Here I started by painting the sky, and then I put in this distant tree line a little bit sooner than I probably should have. So that meant that this little distant tree line really bloomed up into the sky. I'll be honest, I was a bit alarmed at first when it first happened, but I decided to just let it go and see how it turned out. It's a chance to have a little bit of faith in yourself and trust that you'll be able to make something of whatever happens on the page. It's great fun to do that. And really, all that happened is that the tree line ended up much higher than it was in the reference. There's no problem with that. And in the end, it really has become my favorite part of the painting. It created a lovely texture in those trees, and it's the sort of thing I couldn't have painted any other way. Sometimes the paint knows best. The third shift in approach that I'd like to suggest is to treat painting like playtime, not a performance. It's so natural to feel like you want to get things right and do your very best. Of course, this is what we're always trying to do, and it comes from a very good place. The problem is that we tend to put that in the context of the final product, putting the emphasis on the finished painting. But really, do we actually need a painting? I think that what we need much more is just a little bit of time to forget about the chores and the general adulting and whatever else you've got going on in your life, and just enjoy making something with our hands, regardless of how it turns out. We deserve the satisfaction of learning something new and creating rather than consuming. I always think that painting is like meditating for people who don't like meditating. An hour of play is worth so much more than a perfect piece. Ready to see how it feels to paint like this for yourself? Join my free watercolor tree class and we'll paint together step by step so you can relax, paint, and be proud of what comes out on the page. Tap the link on the screen or in the description to grab your free class now.